global news in Zuma, Nigeria. Let's begin with at least 20 dead, 155 injured in Gaza shelling. U.S. prosecutors ready to delay Trump hush money trial. Russian war machine trying to recruit Ukrainian teens. Japan's move on tax dodging foreigners sparks concern. And Michigan school shooter's father guilty of manslaughter. On Israel-Gaza war, no less than 20 people were killed and 155 others injured by Israeli bombardment as they waited for aid on Thursday as desperate Palestinians progressively face deadly violence in their search for food. Gaza's health ministry says Israel's military has denied being behind the attack and said it was evaluating the incident. According to Mohammed Grab, a doctor at the emergency unit at Al-Shifa Hospital, said the death toll is likely to rise as casualties are still being transferred to the hospital. Earlier, a witness on the scene said dozens of people had died. The incident was a result of the Israeli occupation forces aiming an assembly of citizens waiting for humanitarian aid to satisfy their thirst at the Kuwaiti roundabout in Gaza, the health ministry said, adding that medical teams are unable to deal with the volume and type of injuries reaching hospitals in northern Gaza due to weak medical and human capabilities. The attack took place amid a backdrop of a severe hunger and poverty in the besieged enclave due to Israel's extreme curbs on aid entering Gaza, where over 500,000 people are on the brink of famine, according to United Nations agencies. The Kuwaiti roundabout in Gaza City has become known as an area where aid trucks distribute food, attracting crowds of people desperate for supplies. In a short statement on Friday, the Israel Defense Forces IDF denied it was responsible for the attack. Mohammed Basal, Gaza's civil defense spokesperson, accused Israel of being behind the attack in a statement late on Thursday. Israel has for months restricted the flow of aid into Gaza. However, some trucks have been permitted into the northern part of the strip where hunger is most acute. Amid a collapse of public authority in Gaza, the arrival of aid trucks has stoked chaos and disorder that often leaves thousands at risk of harm during the distribution. Prosecutors in the United States have said they are prepared to delay Donald Trump's criminal trial on charges connected to making hush money payments for up to 30 days so the former president's lawyers can review recently obtained evidence. The first ever criminal trial of an ex-U.S. president was set to commence on March 25th. New York prosecutors on Thursday said they were open to delaying the beginning of the trial in an abundance of caution to give Trump's lawyers time to revise records from an earlier federal investigation into the matter. Trump, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee and likely opponent of President Joe Biden in the November election, has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business records to hide his former lawyer Michael Cohen's $130,000 US payment to adult performer Stormy Daniels for her silence before the 2016 election about a sexual encounter she says they had a decade earlier. In a heavily redacted filing dated March 8 and made public on Thursday, Trump's lawyers said they require more time to review thousands of pages of documents they newly received from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, which had earlier probed Cohen's payment to Daniels. An interruption will mark another victory for Trump, who has sought to slow down proceedings in various legal entanglements. The hush money case in Manhattan is planned to be the first of 4 criminal cases against Trump to reach trial. None of the other cases has a firm trial date, but any delay to the New York trial could thwart their scheduling. Trump denies an encounter with Daniels. His lawyers have argued that Cohen paid off Daniels to spare Trump's family embarrassment, not to increase his electoral chances, as prosecutors have alleged. They suggested at least 90-day trial to delay to the trial and also urged Justice Juan Merchan to consider dismissing the indictment altogether, arguing some of the federal prosecutor's evidence undermined the district attorney's arguments. Merchan will have to approve any delay to the trial. It was not immediately clear when he will rule. The statements demonstrate that Cohen did not seek to be and was not acting for the benefits of President Trump's campaign, Trump's lawyer Todd Blank wrote. The statement he was referring to were redacted. Moving on, in the spring of 2022, Russian forces deported Bogdan Yermokin from the occupied Ukrainian city of Mariupol, flew him to Moscow on a government plane, and placed him into a foster family. He was sent to a patriotic camp close to the capital where flag-waving staff praised Russian President Vladimir Putin and tried to teach him nationalistic songs. The Ukrainian teenager was given a Russian passport and sent to a Russian school, and then in the fall of 2023, not long before his 18th birthday, he received a summons from a Russian military recruitment office. Yermokin, who's now back in Ukraine and recovering from his ordeal in Kyiv, said, according to reports, that he believed this was the final step in Russia's attempt to bully him into submission, a bid to sign him up as a soldier to fight against his own people. Yermokin was part of a group of children known as the Mariupol 31 who were taken to Russia. Ukrainian authorities approximate that 20,000 children have been forcibly transported to Russia since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of the country in February 2022. According to official statistics, over 2,100 children remain missing, but the government says the real number could be much higher. The International Criminal Court (ICC) issued an arrest warrant for Putin and the Russian Commissioner for the Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova, last March for their alleged role in abducting and deporting Ukrainian children. Russia has publicly acknowledged the transfer of Ukrainian children without guardians, despite some having guardians or parents. Ukrainian's Human Rights Commissioner Dmytro Lubinets said his office was convinced that Russia's attempts to turn Ukrainian teenagers deported to Russia or living in occupied areas of the East into soldiers were part of a broader push by Putin to wipe out the Ukrainian identity. It is also an opportunity for Moscow to replenish its forces on the front lines. It is unlawful under the Geneva Conventions for an occupying power to force or pressure the local population to serve in its armed forces, according to the International Committee of the Red Cross. Human Rights Watch has said Russia is committing a war crime by doing so. But Lubinets said, according to reports, that Ukrainian authorities have seen Russian officials to do just that in occupied areas, persuading Ukrainians to serve. The conscription efforts began with the opening of the regional offices for various Russian government departments, including health and social services. In Japan, for foreigners, permanent residency has long been a much sought-after assurance of security in a country that has historically avoided mass immigration. But proposals by Tokyo to cancel the permanent residence PR status for those who fail to pay their taxes and social insurance contributions are now calling that security into question, triggering agitation among some long-time foreign residents. Ben Sheeran, a British native who has lived in Japan for nearly 24 years, is among those questioning the rationale behind the proposed changes to immigration law. Under the standard process for obtaining permanent residency, applicants must have lived in Japan for at least 10 years and held a work visa for 5 of those years. However, since 2017, foreign residents have been able to fast-track the process to as little as 1 year if they score highly on a points-based assessment that looks at work experience, salaries, academic qualifications, age, and Japanese language proficiency. The law also states that a foreigner's permanent residence must be in the best interest of Japan, which includes paying taxes, pension contributions, and health insurance premiums. Presently, the government can only cancel an individual's permanent residence in a slim set of circumstances, including being sentenced over 1 year in prison. Under the proposals, authorities will be able to cancel residence visas over the non-payment of taxes and prison sentences of less than 1 year. Now, a Michigan jury has convicted the father of a teenager who lethally shot 4 classmates at a high school close to Detroit of manslaughter after prosecutors argued he bore responsibility because he and his wife gave their son a gun and ignored warning signs of violence. On Thursday, James Crumbley, 47, was found guilty a month after his wife, Jennifer Crumbley, 45, was found guilty on manslaughter charges in February connected to the shooting. James Crumbley faced 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 1 for each of the victims in the 2021 shooting. The couple face separate trials and were the first parents in the U.S. to be charged in a mass school shooting committed by their child. Ethan Crumblin was 15 at the time of the attack on Oxford High School and used a semi-automatic handgun. The verdicts were read at around 7:15 p.m. local time at the end of a full day of negotiations in Oakland County Court. Both will be sentenced on April 9th. Manslaughter carries a penalty of up to 15 years in prison. Ethan pleaded guilty in 2022 to 4 counts of first-degree murder and other charges and was sentenced to life in prison without parole in December. The U.S., a country with persistent gun violence, has experienced a series of school shootings over the years, often carried out by current or former students. Karen McDonald, the prosecutor for Oakland County, Michigan, told the jury during closing arguments on Wednesday that this is a very egregious and rare set of facts. McDonald said James Crumbley continually ignored warning signs that his son was intensely disturbed, did not get him help, the needed help, and did not do enough to safely store the firearm in the family home. McDonald also presented the jury with texts that the teenager had sent to a friend and journal entries he had written in months leading up to the shooting, in which he talked about wanting medical attention and hearing voices, but stating concern his parents will be angry. On one occasion, according to a text message to a friend, McDonald said Ethan had asked James Crumbley to take him to the doctor, but his dad gave some pills and told him to suck it up. Maria Lehman, a defense lawyer, argued that James Crumbley could not have possibly foreseen that his son would carry out a mass shooting. Lehman told jurors during her closing argument James had no idea that his son was having a hard time, saying no evidence had been presented that James knew the contents of his son's text messages or journal. On more stories on Israel-Gaza war, Abbas appoints Mustafa as Palestinian Prime Minister. Mahmoud Abbas, Palestinian president, has appointed his longtime economic advisor, Mohammed Mustafa, to be the next prime minister in the face of U.S. pressure to restructure the Palestinian Authority as part of Washington's post-war vision for Gaza. Mustafa, a U.S.-educated economist and political independent, now faces the task of creating a new government for the PA, which has limited powers in parts of the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Abbas asked Mustafa to put together plans to reunify administration in the occupied West Bank and Gaza, lead reforms in the government, security services, and economy, and fight corruption, in a statement announcing the appointment on Thursday. Mustafa substitutes former Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh, who, along with his government, resigned in February, citing the need for change amidst Israel's war on Gaza and growing violence in the occupied West Bank. The internationally recognized PA, which is dominated by the Fatah party, exercises limited self-rule in the occupied West Bank but lost control of Gaza to Hamas in 2007. Goals to reunify governance of Palestinian lands after faced major obstacles, including strong opposition from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and a devastating war that is still grinding on with no end in sight. Fatah and Hamas are anticipated to meet in Moscow this week for discussions. Mustafa, 69, has held senior positions at the World Bank and formerly served as Deputy Prime Minister and Economy Minister. Abbas appointed Mustafa as the chairman of the Palestine Investment Fund (PIF) in 2015, which has approximately $1 billion in assets and funds projects across the occupied Palestinian territory. He served as a deputy prime minister responsible for economic affairs from 2013 to 2014, when he led a committee tasked with rebuilding Gaza after the 7-week war in which over 2,100 Palestinians were killed. Now in Africa on politics, Senegal frees opposition leaders ahead of polls. Ousmane Sonko, Senegal's top opposition leader, has been released from prison, stoking jubilant celebrations outside the prison as well as across the capital. According to reports, Sonko was freed along with key ally Bassirou Diomaye Faye late on Thursday. The release comes after a chaos stoked by President Macky Sall's decision to postpone the February 25th presidential vote and was anticipated following last week's passage of an amnesty law for acts committed in relation with political demonstrations since 2021. The election, which authorities wanted to postpone for 10 months, is now due to take place on March 24th. They came out in front of us lawyer Chike Koriyosi. Sonko was at the heart of a bitter 2-year standoff with the state and has been in prison since July. The legal case against him, along with growing economic and social tensions, led to deadly conflict between 2021 and 2023. Sonko came third in the 2019 presidential election, but was banned from running as a candidate in this year's poll. News of his release brought thousands of supporters onto the streets of Dakar, chanting Sonko's name on the street outside his house. The opposition leader is popular among young people, and his fiery campaign to address corruption has resonated in a country where the cost of living is rising and many people are struggling. After he was disqualified from contesting the election, Sonko endorsed Faye to replace him on the ballot. Faye, who was jailed in April 2023, has been unable to address voters in prison since campaigning kicked off on March 9th. Incumbent Macky Sall is not standing for re-election this year. His last-minute decision to defer the February presidential votes led to unrest in which 4 people were killed. Bouts of unrest since 2021 have left dozens dead and led to hundreds of arrests in a country often viewed as a pillar of stability in West Africa, where there have been dozens of coups and attempted coups in recent decades. In South Africa, 2 suspects in court for murder of 3 Egyptian monks. On Thursday, 2 men accused of fatally stabbing 3 Egyptian monks belonging to the Coptic Orthodox Church in South Africa this week appeared in court and will remain in custody until their next court appearance. Said Basanda has been identified as a 37-year-old Egyptian national. His co-accused Samuel Ava Marcos is identified in the charge sheet as a 47-year-old South African citizen. They both registered their addresses as the same plot in the town of Cullinan, where the murders took place. The case has been suspended to 27th March for the 2 to get legal representation and Arabic translator that they have requested. According to police, the 2 were detained after the monks were killed on Tuesday at the St. Mark Apostle and St. Samuel the Confessor Monastery in Cullinan, a town east of the capital, Pretoria, where a 4th person was also beaten with an iron rod before escaping to safety. According to the police, nothing was stolen during the attack and its motive remains unknown. The Coptic Orthodox Church has its headquarters in Egypt and dioceses in many countries. It is one of the oldest Christian communities in the world and has been the aim of deadly attacks by Islamic militants in Egypt and elsewhere. Such deadly attacks on churches and places of worship, however, are sporadic in South Africa, and the reasons for the triple killing this week remains unclear. The Coptic Orthodox Church named the monks killed in South Africa as Monk Higumen Takla Al-Samueli, Monk Justus Ava Marcos, and Monk Mina Ava Marcos. All 3 were Egyptian nationals. The Coptic Orthodox Church of South Africa said that El Samueli was the deputy of the local diocese. Now I'll bring you more stories after this break from Nigeria. Do stay with us. You're welcome back. Stories from Nigeria. On insecurity, bandits demand 1 billion naira ransom for Kaduna school students. The bandits who abducted 287 pupils last week at a public school in Kuriga in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State are demanding for 1 billion naira ransom for the release of the children. On Tuesday, the kidnappers made contact through the principal of the school, Abubakar Isa, who was abducted alongside the students on Thursday. The terrorists contacted one Aminu Kuriga, a friend of the school's principal, at around 2 p.m. on Tuesday, asking for the amount. According to reports, the location where the terrorists asked the residents to deliver the ransom is part of Quimbana Game Reserve, a dreaded forest that crosses Nigeria's northwest and north-central regions. The biggest part of the forest is in Dansadou Emirate in Zamfara State. The Dansadou part covers 492 square kilometers out of the 1,180 square kilometers of Zamfara State, which is over 1/3 of the landmass of the state. A set of students of the Federal University Gusau Zamfara State, abducted by suspected terrorists last September, were moved to the Kwambana Game Reserve and are yet to be released. The Kaduna State government has yet to speak on the development, but Mansur Hassan, the police spokesperson in the state, said the command was unaware of the development. He said efforts were being made for the release of the children unconditionally. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has promised not to pay ransom to kidnappers in any parts of the country. Mohammed Idris, Information Minister, stated this in Abuja on Wednesday, that the president also directed security agencies to ensure the release of all kidnapped victims without the payment of ransom. And finally, on the news, federal government eases student loan accessibility in new proposal. Major change of the student loan scheme of the federal government has been proposed for legislation by the National Assembly. The fresh plan will ease loan access by students. Yesterday, it was sent as an executive bill to the Senate and the House of Representatives for consideration and passage. Thursday would have been the official kickoff of the program, but it was shifted indefinitely. The new bill seeks to scrap the Student Loan Act, which is to be substituted. On June 12, 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signed into law the Student Loan Bill to provide interest-free loans to Nigerians seeking higher education. It was sponsored by former House of Representatives Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila, now Chief of Staff to the President. It was introduced in 2016 as part of procedures to tackle the funding gaps in tertiary education. The new bill got prompt consideration at the two chambers. It spells out the funding structure and other conditions attached to the loan. The bill, which scaled the first and second reading on day one, proposes 1% of all collectible revenue by the Federal Inland Revenue Service (FIRS) to fund the scheme. The hurdles of a guarantor appearance, debt profile, and others in the old Act have been removed in the new bill, thereby making it easier for the loan to be accessed. The Senate and House received from the President a bill which seeks to amend the Students' Loan Access to Higher Education Act 2023. The President's letter was read by Senate President Godswill Akpabio and Speaker Tajuddin Abbas. The President said he hoped the bill will receive the usual quick consideration of the lawmakers. Both chambers halted their pertinent rules and passed the bill for first reading. They thereafter referred the bill to the Committee of the Whole, where they separately considered and passed it for second reading. Another look at the top stories: at least 20 dead, 155 injured in Gaza shelling. U.S. prosecutors ready to delay Trump hush money trial. Russian war machine trying to recruit Ukrainian teens. Japan's move on tax dodging foreigners sparks concern. And Michigan school shooter's father guilty of manslaughter. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend ahead.